So let's get started. So why Mexico now? I think with all the transitions that we've been living through, it's a great opportunity for us to share some of the things that are happening in our world. Some are similar than the U.S., some are very different. And that's the spirit of what we want to accomplish today, is to give you a glimpse of what is happening. Just a few days ago, I was speaking to one of my colleagues from a commission in Idaho, and she was saying that whenever, this whole year has been about survival for her. And she says, we're doing a project together here in Mexico, but she's so busy, and I think this is a reality we're all facing. We're so busy navigating our day-to-day and just getting through from one day to the next that it's sometimes difficult to envision what other cities are doing or what other countries are doing. So that's why we're here today, to give you a glimpse of why it's important to look at Mexico now. So in our team here in Mexico, I'm Fabiola. We have Vanessa Salcido. She's our agriculture project manager. And then we have Hillary Carr, who's our commerce project manager. Most of you have been in touch with us on and off through the year. And I think this is an important thing to mention. This year alone, we've had an increase of over 30% emails back and forth with our companies in Idaho and phone calls, et cetera. So our communication with the pandemic has been quite a bit tighter, probably because we're solving and looking for solutions to problems that we've had, and a lot of new opportunities that people are exploring. So this is our team here in Mexico. And we'll be talking about a brief introduction and reflections, a little bit of the social commentary that's happening in Mexico, our COVID friend, and what the pandemic is doing, economic perspectives. We'll also be talking about things that are happening in trends in Mexico, among which e-commerce is front and center. Vanessa's going to talk about that. And Hillary will talk about different changes in industries that we're seeing. And because of the changes that are happening, the new opportunities and the white spaces that are opening up because of this. So on the reflective side, and I wanted to start with someone that I admire very much. Albert Einstein has been quoted for so many things through the years. And this is one quote that I think is so relevant for us today. In the midst of chaos and in the midst of every crisis lies a great opportunity. And who better to have said that than Mr. Einstein, who had to flee Europe, had to flee Germany in 1929 because he saw the writing on the wall of what was happening to the Jewish people in Europe. So talking about, looking and finding opportunities in every crisis, I think he's a great source of inspiration. So that's what I wanted to get our minds on today. And additionally, what I have started seeing in reflection, 2020 was a year of massive changes in all our lives, in the U.S., in Idaho, in Mexico, the pandemic, among other things, because this last year has been crazy on so many fronts all over the world. The pandemic has brought uncertainty. And we've put our world on hold, our life on hold, because, we didn't know how long this pandemic was going to last. Remember the days we were counting in weeks and then months? Well, we're now still uncertain, and I think we have learned to understand that some of these things are going to be going on longer term. What I have personally learned is that uncertainty doesn't have to be followed by fear. I can tell you that fear paralyzed me the first few months. I was truly afraid because not only for health reasons, my husband had just gotten a liver transplant and he was very, very vulnerable. So we were scared to even open the windows, I don't know if I'm exaggerating or not, but anyway, but the whole thing is that the economy in Mexico also stopped. The government shut down everything, and we're talking about everything. And I know a lot of you learned that firsthand when you desperately were trying to get products out of Mexico to continue your processes. So what did this teach us? Patience has been a huge one for everybody in the world, I think, this year. In my household, with my young adult kids who are now all living at home again, first to just, understand that we can't control things. And as the months progressed, we just started thinking and we started looking at ways to become more resilient. We knew it wasn't just going to be a short-term thing. Uncertainty still alive and well, but we've become more resilient. And in our family, we've really tried to find ways to figure out if plan A doesn't work, then we have to have plan B and plan C and all of that good stuff. You know, those plans have to be in place. And resilience is now a huge part of the business lingo. We are finding new combinations of doing things. We're finding opportunities where others see problems. And this is how we can innovate. This is what creativity can help us just let those creative juices flow. And I don't want to minimize the impact the pandemic has had worldwide. I mean, we can spend days and days talking about it, but I do want to bring our attention to what those opportunities and how thinking differently can truly make a change. So when we're talking about changes, I think for 2021, our focus will be on making these new connections. At the beginning of 2020, in March, we were all thinking that the global supply chain was coming to its death, to an end. I mean, we were seeing so many wrenches being thrown into the system. It's a global system, and we realized how connected we were. The scary part living in Mexico is that we were front and center. And Mexico was the one, you know, so many times causing so many problems because literally the government just said, shut it all down. And with it, we took so many industries worldwide with us. But today, we're finding new ways to make sure that the supply chain is becoming more resilient. And we're quickly looking at other ways of sourcing our products, which is very exciting because the supply chain is stronger and more agile than ever. And so when we're looking at Mexico, Mexico is incredibly well connected to the world. And I think this is one of the biggest advantages. You know, we talk about Mexico in terms of its connectivity through free trade agreements. It's a country that has the most, over 40 plus trade agreements. It's a gateway to Latin America. We have great connections with most countries in Latin America, and it's a platform that's easily used to our advantage with Idaho companies to make exponential what presence you have here that we can take globally, Latin America into the globe. So what better opportunity to introduce our idea of having a governor's trade mission this year. We're looking to work with Governor Brad Little, April 19th through the 23rd. And I truly would love for you to take the time to evaluate it. This is a great opportunity for you to explore Mexico or try to broaden your presence in Mexico. And we're here to help. We've got limited space. It's on a first come, first serve. Mine is to sign up on January. Here, there'll be something that we'll know. It's getting a note that you can't hear me? You cannot hear me. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Oh, I see. Thank you. I think I'm causing a lot of noise here. Sorry about that. Okay, moving right along. So what's keeping our Mexican executives up at night? Again, some of these things may be very similar to what we see in the U.S., but some things are very specific to Mexico, and I'm going to broaden it to countries that don't have the stability, the economic stability or the governmental stability that we see in other markets. The first thing we have that's very disconcerting is that we have a lack of federal government support. You know, we hear in the U.S. about $1 trillion incentive for rekindling the economy. There's nothing here in Mexico. The federal government is doing little. They're sticking to their plans of austerity. The president he's all about austerity and not spending. And what is that doing? It's really not helping our economy.
Fabiola, we can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to try something different. Just a moment, please.
That was better.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry about that. Okay, let me retake it from what's keeping the executives up at night. So the lack of federal government support is truly disconcerting in Mexico. The government is sticking to its austerity plan, regardless of the need to incentivize the economy. We see so many businesses going out of business, and I know it's the same in many parts of the U.S. In Mexico, it's dire. There really is no federal government support. They're doing the few programs that they implemented last year, and they're sticking to their guns. Another thing that's keeping executives up at night in Mexico is a lack of working capital, because there's so many consumers or customers that haven't been able to pay. Companies are finding it really difficult to keep their business afloat because there's no cash flow coming through. High interest rates. Mexico has not lowered its interest rates. We see the countries like Brazil, Argentina, they've all lowered their business rates, but we are still looking at the high interest rates, and that is one killer for the economy here in Mexico. And this is all creating a lot of uncertainty for the economy, and we still have to make decisions based on this economic uncertainty. So who's leading the change in Mexico? And going to Albert Einstein's, where there's a crisis, there's opportunity. The federal government is standing firm with their austere program, but the states in Mexico are kicking in. We have been so excited to see all the different activities and initiatives that the states have taken on over the past year. It's really mind-blowing, and they're investing where they can. They're growing certain things, and you're going to hear both Vanessa and Hillary talking about some of these things. So while the federal government isn't promoting recovery, the states are definitely alive, and I'm going to say much stronger than they were before. About Mexico's performance, we have seen over the last few years that Mexico has become an export powerhouse. On the electronics front, Mexico exports #1 for TVs, #2 and 3 for all kinds of electronics worldwide. This is where the global supply chain kicks in. The economic parameters in Mexico have been a little bit more disconcerting because the economy is much slower. And we are looking at different things that are slowing our economy. The government isn't taking on debt, so it's killing our GDP. We're also looking at different things that we see with COVID and how it's been handled. It's not a pleasant thing to say that Mexico has not been stepping up on the different initiatives that we see other countries doing. Now, having said all this, Mexico is still only down 5% with a foreign direct investment. That's incredible, considering how stagnant the economy seems to be. We're way down on the GDP. We're close to minus 12% for the year, but foreign direct investment is still coming in. And what this means is that Mexico is such an integrated economy to the world. And this is what's going to get Mexico to regain its footing for this year and the years coming forward. 2020, I'm getting my years confused, is the year the economy has been the worst since the Great Depression. Yet Mexico is still maintained its status as the #1 exporter to the U.S. So there must be, I think there's just economies of scale here, and this market is a very robust market. Fortunately, it's what's going to get us through to the next few years in the rebound. And on the pandemic side, on the vaccines, obviously the vaccines are going to reshape our world yet again. We hear a lot of inoculation taking place worldwide, in the U.S., in Europe, and again, this is a huge difference. In Mexico, it's just started. And is where we see the biggest difference between the haves and the have-nots. This is really very different in the U.S. We'll see in Mexico how that pans out, but it will probably take a lot longer to reopen our economy to what will be the new normal because of the slow program for the pandemic and the vaccinations. So Mexico's potential is really focused in the near future, in the medium future. Mexico is still a very young country. And I want to emphasize this because when we're looking at the assets that Mexico has as a potential market for our Idaho companies, Mexico is still a very young country. Over 45% of the population today is still under the age of 25. And what does this mean? It means that every day for the next few years, we're going to see a lot of people joining the workforce, creating more income for the country and more disposable income for products. It's also, Mexico has become very integrated in their choices and in their likes of products with the U.S. and with foreign products. So while they tend to be more expensive, Mexico is used to getting their products from the U.S. and they're not going to be going away from that. And when we're looking at the different exports from the U.S., overall the exports from the U.S. and Idaho specifically are down about 20%. But we have some bright spots. Let's start with food and agriculture. Overall, it's down 7%, but we do have some very bright spots where we have wheat up 30%. Then we have hops because beer was shut down completely for the first few months. That went down 50%, but we're seeing a huge rebound on our hops and our malted barley, which is coming up and running again. Beef has regained pre-pandemic levels. So this is where you're going to see some of the trends that Vanessa talks about later. And on the commerce side, we've definitely are down as a total, but there are some areas that bring new opportunities. And continued opportunities. Safety and security is still front and center in Mexico. Everything related to that, we're seeing an increase actually in partners reaching out to find suppliers for different aspects of safety and security. Office furniture, huge imports from Idaho to Mexico. Everybody's making their offices pretty, their home offices pretty. The same as the U.S., that's the same thing that we're having here in Mexico. And the workforce is going to be staying in Mexico much longer. The government just passed a mandate to regulate conditions for employees in Mexico, which goes to show that we will be seeing this way of working for a long time here in Mexico. And of course, medical. I think we need to say more about that. So with that, I will forward the conversation on to Vanessa. And she will talk about the trends and e-commerce here in Mexico, which has been very exciting today. Thank you. Vanessa?
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Fabi. So I'm going to be focusing mainly on e-commerce. I think one of the bright spots of 2020 was e-commerce, not in Mexico, but all around the world. So at the beginning of the pandemic, many Mexican consumers were forced to start exploring this channel for the first time. So even though e-commerce has been here in Mexico for a long time, it's still underdeveloped. And so a lot of Mexicans did not have access to internet or were not, they thought it was not secure to buy online. So I think according to the Mexican Association of Online Sales, Mexico has had a growth equivalent to 3 years in the participation of e-commerce. 5 out of 10 companies in Mexico are doubling their growth on the internet. What's interesting about this is that a big part of this growth is from new buyers. Next slide, please, Fabi. So it's interesting that a big part of this growth is from new buyers. E-commerce is expected to grow 60% this year. Online platforms such as Mercado Libre, Amazon have recorded a 20% growth year to date. Different from the US, Mexico is a cash economy. Many Mexicans think it's more secure or more convenient to buy online, to buy with cash instead of going online. Also, many Mexicans do not own a credit card or a debit card, so to buy things online, you cannot only pay with a card, but you can also purchase services online at convenience stores or at any bank. So different from the US, these multinational platforms had to adapt to the Mexican consumer habits and now accept cash too. So for example, to pay for this, you have around 2 to 4 hours to go to a convenience store and make your payment, and then send a copy of your receipt, for example, to be able to buy online. Also, what we've seen is that there's been a lot of repeated purchase. So there's a high retention of online users, which is good. Also, mobile devices to engage in e-commerce have been growing steadily in Mexico because it's easy, it's convenient, although PCs and laptops remain important to buy online. So what does this mean for Idaho companies? Well, it's important, first of all, for companies to set up objectives to selling online and develop strategies to really get consumers, to get to consumers so they get to know your product. Not put it out there because you have to have a more broad strategy. Next slide, please. So where are the 3 top key players in e-commerce in Mexico? Well, first, the number one is Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre is the commerce platform in Mexico for excellence. It is an Argentinian marketplace similar to eBay that's all around Latin America with around 150 million consumers. This marketplace allows users, both individuals and businesses, to sell products across a range of categories. Then there is Amazon Mexico. Amazon Mexico is the second largest e-commerce platform, and it offers products in almost all categories. But before the pandemic, Amazon Mexico customers relied more on the site to buy technology, games, software, but now it has grown so much this last year that now it's across all categories. Then there's Walmart. Well, Walmart is not only the largest retail store in the world, but it's also the biggest online department store in Mexico. Walmart has a strong e-platform and has become one of the most popular variety stores in the country, offering goods across 3 categories: supermarkets, electronics, and home goods. There are other 2 Mexican-founded companies who offer online sales and have a strong e-commerce platform. These are Coppel and Liverpool. Coppel and Liverpool are 2 huge department stores across Mexico. And then, of course, you have the member price clubs like Sam's and Costco Mexico that also operate online. But the thing with these 2 is that they do not sell fresh products online, only dry goods. So they're not as popular as Walmart. Next slide, please. So here we have a graphic of how popular these e-commerce platforms are. So we're talking about total merchandise here. So if you see the pie chart, Mercado Libre, I was amazed when I saw this. Mercado Libre has an estimated monthly traffic of 127 million visits. That's almost half of the pie. So it's half of the total. It's impressive. Then we have Amazon Mexico with an estimated monthly traffic of 63.7 million visits. Then there's Walmart with an estimated monthly traffic of 27 million visits. And then we have Coppel and Liverpool, Coppel with 23 million visits and Liverpool with 21 million visits. Next slide, please. And then food and groceries. So why do we separate food and groceries from total merchandise? Because, for example, in Mexico, Amazon does not sell food and groceries. It's not as popular as in the US for food and groceries. And also in the US, you have Amazon Fresh. So these platforms sell more all over categories, but right now, food and groceries, supermarkets or grocery stores are more in charge for food and groceries online. So here is a chart where you can see that the definite winner in e-commerce at the supermarket sector was Walmart with a 73% market share in e-commerce, followed by La Comer and Chedraui, each with 10%, and Soriana with 7%. Next slide, please. This is interesting because we've been in contact with several states in Mexico, and several states in Mexico are investing in digital commerce. So first we have Baja California. Baja California is within the Ministry of Economy, has done a series of online virtual meetings to be able to talk about, sorry, I just lost a little bit. Well, has been done in collaboration with Amazon and Mercado Libre, a cycle of online training for companies, specifically SMEs, that wanted to know more about digital commerce and how to access this technology. Regarding international e-commerce, there are several companies in Baja California that are dedicated to e-commerce fulfillment and that follow the 3PL model. Centers for several companies are also under construction, including Walmart in Mexicali. Then we have Jalisco. Jalisco, also within the Economy Minister, has an initiative called Digitalization of SMEs, which is to support non-technological SMEs to use technology, for example, e-commerce, to be more efficient, and they give financial aid to do this. Also, there is a Jalisco logistics hub project within the Guadalajara airport, where companies such as Mercado Libre, Amazon, FedEx are planning to open huge warehouses in Jalisco, also to meet the growing demand of the Bajío region. Then there's Querétaro. Last December, Mercado Libre announced that they will have their logistical hub in Querétaro with 4 flights daily. Next slide, please. So, direct-to-consumer platform. Direct-to-consumer platforms market, sell, and ship their products themselves without middlemen. So, for example, with this situation of the pandemic and everything, companies had to innovate, had to stay afloat, had to do different strategies to not shut down. So, for example, here we have a Sigma Food Service. Sigma Food Service sells mainly to restaurants and bars. But since many restaurants shut down or reduced operations, Sigma had to adapt and find a new way to reach customers in a different way. So they created their own direct-to-consumer platform and now create end meals and experiences they deliver to consumers. For example, Sigma carries several Idaho products, such as Idaho beef, frozen potatoes, Idaho cheeses. Next slide, please. Consumers today, well, I talked about this before, but it is a unique time in consumers' behavior. The pandemic has changed consumers' behaviors, and some of them permanently. With the start of the pandemic, supermarkets reported less shopping trips and increased value per transaction. Many Mexican consumers try new ways to shop. They start buying online for groceries. Now, in a lot of supermarkets in Mexico, you can pick up at store. They also, grocery delivery is also a biggie here in Mexico. But it took a long time for Mexican consumers to adapt and start buying online. It was a significant change for our local market, different to other countries or to the US. According to Euromonitor, the new consumers' behaviors formed will become habits the longer the lockdown measures last. Consumers look for seamless experiences online. So to remain relevant in this changed environment, retailers will need to invest in improving customers' experiences online and find opportunities to innovate. Retailers will also have to work on retaining online users by making online purchases faster, safer, more reliable, creating loyalty programs, etc. Next slide, please. Challenges. Well, not everything is good. As I said, e-commerce in Mexico is still underdeveloped. So I think Mexico faces big challenges in terms of digital commerce. A big challenge is expanding their coverage, which now targets targets largest cities. These go hand in hand also by the lack of internet access outside large cities. So that's a big challenge to overcome. Another one is there's a lot to improve in terms of shipping and logistics. Several retailers will have to work on having a more structured operation and invest in technology to offer customers a better experience online. Then there's the third one, getting more people to own credit or debit cards. So the financial sector must improve its role as an ally of e-commerce through making it easier to open a bank account and through implementing technology to be able to make purchases at any point. But despite of the challenges, Mexico has made great progress in terms of digital commerce. E-commerce in Mexico has a huge potential, and there's plenty of opportunities for it to keep growing. Next slide, please. So what to consider when looking at e-commerce in Mexico to finding the right platform for you? Well, first of all, look for the fees and expenses. You need to know exactly how much you're going to pay. Most platforms will charge a monthly fee, and some of them will charge processing fees. Then the scalability. Look for a platform that will scale along with your business, no matter your business size. Then there's customer service. Look for platforms that will have a call center and are available 24/7, and that you can reach out to them whenever you need. Then the security, I think, is one of the biggest concerns among customers. So choose a platform that has a robust security as a standard. While these may be the same in other markets, since we are in the first stages and e-commerce is just developing, it will be important to pay close attention to large variances between one platform and another. Because of the expansive growth of e-commerce open new opportunities for companies, for Idaho companies. So focus on how to capitalize on this and find the best approach to start selling your product in Mexico. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me to know more about e-commerce. And now I give the floor to Hillary Carr. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Vanessa. As she mentioned, my name is Hillary Carr, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. We've faced a lot of challenges this year, but as Fabiola duly noted, this has also created a lot of opportunities. So during the next few minutes, I really want to focus on these opportunities, new opportunities in Mexico, and also look at white spaces that we've identified over the course of 2020. Next slide, please. Remittances. At the beginning of the year, economists were very worried because they thought remittances, which are direct cash payments in most cases from individuals in the United States to individuals and businesses in Mexico, were going to plummet in 2020 due to the pandemic. People were predicting that they were going to reach 2008 and 2009 levels. However, this has not happened. 2020 was the best year for remittances since they started keeping records, and there was an 11% increase. And early figures show that 2020 remittances have totaled close to $41 billion. And why is this important? This is important because when we look at the numbers, we can see that these payments are being funneled or deposited to key geographic areas. So the state of Jalisco, Michoacán, Guanajuato, and the following cities and municipalities: Tijuana, Guadalajara, Morelia, and Puebla. So many of you might be wondering, well, why is this important? This is important because Mexican consumers in these states and municipalities have more disposable income, and they definitely need to be a target area for Idaho and U.S. exports. Next slide, please. As most of you probably know, on July 1st, the USMCA went into effect. And the USMCA updated the trilateral trade agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And again, what does this mean for Idaho companies? We've seen an uptick in manufacturing opportunities, especially along the U.S.-Mexico border, because states are proactively reacting as they've received inquiries from Southeast Asian and European multinationals that are making strategic investments in the North American market in order to comply with the new USMCA regional content rules. And what does this mean? As OEMs have started to expand their market presence in Mexico, they are having major sourcing needs, as Mexico lacks qualified Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 suppliers, especially when we're talking about advanced manufacturing, aerospace, automotive, and the medical device industry. The second quarter in Mexico was abysmal, like it was in most countries across the world. But in the third quarter, we saw the economy grow over 12%. And this was fueled by a 22% increase or surge in secondary industries in manufacturing, like automotive, energy, and mining. And I really kind of want to focus on automotive and aerospace in a certain sense because they're crossover industries. So we've seen that a lot of suppliers that maybe traditionally were just servicing the automotive and aerospace industry are also expanding their portfolios and working with the medical device sector, the heavy machinery, mining, energy, etc. And as Fabiola mentioned, at the beginning of the pandemic, the Mexican federal government just shut everything down. So in the automotive industry, for example, we saw a 20% dip in output in March and April. However, the industry has been full steam ahead since mid-May when the government lockdown subsided, and also a lot of stoppages were due to part shortages. Next slide, please. Looking in a bit more detail at the automotive industry, 14 states have a strong automotive presence. And why is this important? Because 29 million Mexicans' jobs are dependent on the automotive industry. And because of the new USMCA rules, these are better paying jobs. And we also know, having participated in a lot of webinar and roundtable discussions, that a lot of Tier 1 and Tier 2 investments are going to be made this year. And looking at the aerospace industry is also an industry that it's relatively new in Mexico, but it's experienced 14% growth year over year over the past 15 years. And this is important also for Idaho, as Idaho also has a burgeoning aerospace community. Mexico has 5 clusters, and, while on a global level, the aerospace industry has been down for a variety of reasons. Felipe Sandoval, who's the director of the Mexican aerospace industry, has been really frank that the news hasn't been all gloom and doom in Mexico. One reason is that aviation numbers are only down 30% in Mexico, which is the best in all of the Americas. And when you look at the 5 clusters, the oldest and largest cluster is in Baja California, and 60% of their business is tied to ITAR. And they've actually seen substantial growth in military contracts. And this is really important to remember because there's also huge needs within the aerospace industry with companies that have ITAR contracts. So if any Idaho businesses have AS9100 and top certifications, this is really, really important. Next slide, please. As Fabiola mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, something that we've learned and realized through all of this is that we need to have resilient supply chains. And really, we need to make sure that we have integrated North American supply chains. And this is something that really has come into light during the pandemic, especially when the automotive, the aerospace, and many industries were shut down in March, April, and May. And just to highlight this a bit further, if you were looking at the aerospace industry, you only have 3% integration, and this 3% is worth $5 billion. So there are huge opportunities in Mexico for Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Tier 3 suppliers. After an incredibly intense lobbying effort by the U.S. federal government, the embassy, state offices like our own, and industry associations, the Mexican federal government decided to designate the aerospace and automotive industries essential services in mid-May, and they also made a decision in mid-May going forward that all Mexican designations were going to be our designations in the United States. Next slide, please. I'm not sure if you all know, but another really bright spot in Mexico is the free trade zone. On January 1st, 2019, President López Obrador designated one of the largest free trade zones along the U.S.-Mexican border. And why is this important? This is important for a myriad of reasons. First of all, income tax and corporate taxes are lower in the federal trade zone, 20% versus 30% in the rest of the country. The value-added tax is also lower in the free trade zone. It's 8% versus 16% in the rest of the country. And energy and gasoline costs are also lower in the free trade zone. The idea is that they should mirror costs in the U.S. And this is really important for businesses because they have more money to reinvest in R&D and et cetera. In addition, it's also important to note that the minimum wage in the free trade zone is also higher. And again, why is this important to why is this important to Idaho companies? This is important because consumers in the free trade zone have more disposable income. And as Vanessa was mentioning in her presentation, if you really look at consumer trends, especially of middle-class Mexicans and upper middle-class Mexicans that live in the free trade zone, their consumption and spending habits are much more similar to their counterparts in the U.S. So you see stores all along the free trade zone that just carry U.S. products. And for example, S-Mart and members of the Idaho Potato Board sell more russet potatoes in the free trade zone than any other export community around the world. And the free trade zone, we also know, is they're the largest consumers of craft beer in all of Mexico. Next slide, please. Another bright spot is minimum wages. Minimum wages were increased in December 2019, and this was part of the USMCA negotiations with the United States. Mexico raised minimum wages across the board. And as I mentioned earlier, minimum wages are about 40% higher in the free trade zone than they are in the rest of the country. And then in December, the Mexican Minimum Wage Board decided to increase minimum wages an additional 15% starting in January 2020. Again, this is important because Mexican consumers in new markets are going to have more disposable income. And this is especially important during COVID times, as a lot of people have lost their jobs, knowing that people who have retained their jobs are going to be earning more. Next slide, please. And I think this is an area where most people are probably really interested is the economic recovery in Mexico. And as Fabiola mentioned, the economic recovery in Mexico is really, really being led by the states. And part of that is just a reflection of the current economic landscape in Mexico. As we've seen, there's been really a robust expansion of manufacturing opportunities along the border, but we've also seen states being really proactive and have state incentives to try to jumpstart Industry 4.0 economies. And even in states that have robust automotive, energy, aerospace sectors, have invested in IT. For example, when we're talking about Baja California or Jalisco. And if you're talking about renewable energy, Coahuila has the largest solar park in the world, and Tamaulipas has the largest wind park in the world. And states like San Luis Potosí realized that they also had to invest in renewable energy in order to expand business opportunities in the states, as energy costs have always been a major sticking point in the state. Another area that's really interesting is also looking at logistics and service industries. We've seen states that are two of the wealthiest states in the Republic, Nuevo León and Querétaro, heavily make strategic investments in both, 21st century logistics and the services industry. We're talking financial services, insurance services, etc. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that given everything that's gone on this past year, and as Fabiola mentioned, that the federal government has really taken kind of a hands-off approach, 10 states decided to form a federal alliance in December. So these states are Guanajuato, Jalisco, Michoacán, Nuevo León, Coahuila, Tamaulipas, Durango, Chihuahua, Colima, and Aguascalientes. And they decided to form this federal alliance where they're not only going to work together, but they're also going to pool resources, money, and talent to really promote trade and commerce. And these states are also making strategic investments in the health sector and also extending microcredits to medium and small and medium-sized enterprises. So if you're also looking at jobs numbers in these states, we've really seen an uptick starting in June, July. These states are also working together because they know that they're leading the economic recovery and that the health of their state depends on trade. So they're also doing, going the extra mile to facilitate trade. And when I say facilitate trade, more often than not, that's with the United States. As Fabiola mentioned, that, Mexico is still the U.S.'s largest trading partner. So we've seen these states also form strategic alliances with the private sector to really make strategic investments and strengthen infrastructure, whether it's air, cargo, freight. For example, in Jalisco, the government invested over $100 million to expand and update the Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta airports. San Luis Potosí has also made a similar investment to update their airport. We've also seen in Monterrey that the state government has invested, I think, close to $400 million to update the airport. In regards to cargo, we've also seen that Guadalajara is has the largest cargo facility in terms of volume, and it's followed by Querétaro. And in December, the state government in Tamaulipas announced that Kansas City Southern had agreed to invest $1 billion in the state to update the Nuevo Laredo station in order to double capacity at the freight terminal. And they also awarded a private concession in order to open a private maritime port in Matamoros, which will open by 2023. Why is this important? I think something that we've learned during this past year and something that we can, we need to remember as we move forward is that, in a virtual world, we also have access to new markets. I think a lot of times when people look at Mexico, they've traditionally, just kind of thought about Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. But because of the pandemic and how we're doing businesses right now, there are a lot of new and expanding opportunities in states that probably weren't on people's radar, like in Chihuahua, in Tamaulipas, in Colima, in Aguascalientes. And it's really exciting because we're on a virtual platform. It's much easier to access these markets and work with state and local colleagues to really explore what's going on in these new areas. So I think that's also something that's really important for everyone in Idaho to think about, as we're going to be having a virtual governor's trade mission in April, that, really there are a lot of bright opportunities and new market opportunities that exporters can take advantage of going into this new year. And with that, I hand it back to you, Fabiola.
So you've heard a lot of new information. For us, I think here in Mexico in our office, the three of us can't reiterate the excitement we feel from our states conversations that we've had locally. And I think these are some of the changes that happen because of crisis, with the federal government just keeping their status quo. The states have had to jump in, and they're actually doing a lot of very interesting things that we'd love to discuss with you, one-on-one. We will definitely be including a lot of that in the governor's trade mission. There's a lot of changes that are here to stay. E-commerce is just starting here in Mexico. And while it sounds so normal to, get on Amazon and click away for your orders, we still doubt sometimes whether our orders are going to arrive on our doorstep. And just this last week, my daughter ordered something, Vanessa ordered something that was delivered in who knows where. And, what's exciting is that they are stepping up, and not just American companies like Amazon and Walmart, but local companies are sending things at no charge. And these are concepts that are very new in Mexico. The customer service, where customers are right and no questions asked, and we want to retain your business regardless, is really new. And on the e-platforms, it's exciting. eBay took about 4 years to start their program here in Mexico. That usually took them about 6 months to set up in a new country. It took them 4 years in Mexico to get their business going, because people and customers in Mexico, consumers, don't trust that things are going to really show up, that you can really put your information into the platforms, and that you're going to be your information is going to be secure. So the cash version is fantastic. They've adapted, and it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. But for now, it's cash is a huge incentive, and it's not slowing sales down. I think that's really wonderful. Working from home is probably going to be something that we see in Mexico longer than we'll see in other markets. Again, because vaccines are going to be slow, and it's just a very complex country that we have a lot of remote areas that may not be have access to vaccines for a long time to come. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But again, I think patience is the name of the game. So with the Governor's Trade Mission, again, we'd love to have you join us. Our attention for the next 3 to 4 months is going to be focused 100% on this. So we really encourage you to get on our mission and let us help you and work together to expand and explore new markets. With the states, again, taking charge of what's happening locally, we have a broader network that we can reach out to potential clients that has been a huge plus because of the pandemic, as Hillary mentioned. So finally, with Mexico, we're front and center. Everybody thinks our country is the most important one in the whole wide world, and I think our whole region is the most important region in the whole wide world. It's exciting to see that Mexico stepped up to the plate. All our U.S. federal government offices were going crazy, like crazy. The ambassador and our ATOs and our foreign commercial service officers from the U.S. worked nonstop in March and April to get the factories going again and to liberate products that were stuck in these factories. There was a story of this one company in Baja California who kept on calling and saying, what can you guys help us do? Because we've got the product, and guess what they are? They're masks, and we have hundreds of thousands to be shipped out. Remember in March when we couldn't get them? Well, they were sitting in a factory, in many factories worldwide probably, but I know firsthand of one such thing. And then the poor guy who was driving the truck and happened to be delivering or picking up stuff a particular day, it's a one truck business, one man with his 18-wheeler that was stuck for 2 months in a factory. And calls were being made here and there to liberate it. This guy had no money to live because he couldn't deliver, and that was his livelihood. So it's exciting to see that we've come a long way. But I mention these incidences because it goes to show that Mexico is different. It really is a very important distinction, and patience, I think, is a huge part of the game. Will we be living with uncertainty? Yes, like Albert Einstein said, you know, uncertainty and chaos brings opportunity. So let's look for opportunities together.